this is a wonderful meeting, and now we get to present you with your Trailblazer Award, which you received on Zoom, and we couldn't give it to you.
Well, good. After a virtual presentation.
Yes, and so this is for a trail. This is a brand new award that we're giving out, especially for you, because you are our founder for Sister Cities, and you made all this possible that we're here today. And the fact that you did something so spectacular that you opened a way for us to be going out through the whole world. And so thank you so much.
Well, I'm flattered. You folks have done so much that to hear this from you and to have Tom and Mary here and so on. That's I appreciate it very much.
And on the back, it's engraved with the date and your name.
It's beautiful.
Wow. Yeah.
And so we thought that Tom said you probably didn't need to have some kind of trophy that you put into someplace and forget about.
This is really nice.
So you can wear it.
Yes, this is one I can put on. So
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And
All right.
thank you. You are really amazing. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. And so we'll get started with our conversation today. Thank you again so much for taking this afternoon with us. We're happy to speak with you because there are so many people in Fort Wayne who want to know more about Sister Cities, Fort Wayne Sister Cities in particular, but don't know much about it. And so we thought, well, let's have a conversation with three people who have had the history and the experience of really leading Fort Wayne Sister Cities and taking us into the future. But before we get started, have you guys introduce yourselves one at a time. Maybe start with Mr. Chapman.
Well, I'm Howard Chapman, and I'm a retired attorney. Still live in Fort Wayne, and have lived here for over 60 years. And spend my time now kind of doing other things, but I'm still happy to be involved with our Sister City program.
I'm Dorothy Kittaka, and I have been with Sister Cities for I don't know how many years, maybe
20.
Almost 20. It doesn't seem possible because it has been such a wonderful opportunity for me to be able to travel to different places, all of our sister cities except Gera, Germany. I have to get to there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so it's been such a pleasure to know Tom and Howard and now Mary and all the new people that are coming on board. I'm very excited about the future of Sister Cities.
Tom, Herr, and I've been on the board for about 20 years as well. I practiced law with Howard, and he's the one that got me involved about 1999 or so. And we did quite a bit. Dorothy and I were both served together, and we did quite a bit. I point out that all three of us came from Illinois, whatever that means.
How about that?
That is
It just dawned on me when Howard said he's
That's
been
right.
here 60 years.
Like Herb Schreiner said, he's born in Illinois, but came here as soon as I heard about it.
Great. So with that, you're all from Illinois. So how did you come from Illinois to Indiana and create Fort Wayne Sister Cities? How did Fort Wayne Sister Cities then come to be?
Well, I came to Fort Wayne because I met a girl in college from Fort Wayne. So that's how I got here.
My husband was with Central Soya, and in 1978, they transferred 30 families from Illinois, plopped us down here in Fort Wayne, Indiana, which we never heard of. And it has been the most wonderful place to be because I'm here and know these great people. And so you never know what fate will bring to you. And just follow it. Because just trust in it, But it's a great place to live.
It's been good. As to the beginning of Fort Wayne Sister Cities, that was Howard. Howard, I know, was asked by the mayor at that time to come up with a project to celebrate the country's bicentennial. And I think it was it your brother, Howard, that suggested finding a sister city?
In 1975, all of America was doing the preparations for the bicentennial coming up the following year. Fort Wayne had a what you call it, bicentennial committee, and a lady named LaDonna Huntley was in charge of it, appointed by the mayor. And when I was in Seattle visiting my brother, he told me about their sister city and asked me if Fort Wayne had a sister city. And I didn't even know what it was. I thought, I don't know. So I came back and I called LaDonna and asked her if she knew anything about it. And I said, well, maybe Fort Wayne ought to get a sister city as a part of your bicentennial celebration. You know, what a nice thing to do as part of the bicentennial. Well, she said, well, I'll think about that. Well, the next thing I know, I got a letter from Mayor Levemoff appointing me to start a sister city committee. So that's how we got started. And I did. So that's how we got started. Yeah.
That's wonderful because, you know, when you suggest something, they usually put you in charge of it.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's right.
So, but we're so pleased and so honored that you did that because we have such a very active, one of the most active chapters of sister cities, I think, in the nation.
Yes, that's true.
Well, one of the things that's made it work is the people like you and Tom and Mary that have come along and kept it going and been involved and so many other people. And the fact is, the more people that get involved in it, the better it does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, that's true. And so we started with Japan and Takaoka, but from there, how did we end up choosing our other sister cities in Friendship City?
Well, we had some interesting contacts. One of them was with Hamburg, Germany, and we thought we were ready to connect with them, and until they sent us their final note said, well, first have an American company come here and build a factory, and then and so that fell through. And then the mayor wanted us to be a sister city of a city in Bulgaria. And we had a wonderful exchange with them, exchanged gifts, and we thought we were going to do something there. And then when we finally said, all right, let's do a formal affiliation, they sort of told us kind of, you know, behind the scenes, well, we're part of the Soviet bloc.
Mm.
We're behind the Iron Curtain, and we're not allowed to have a sister city in the West. So that fell through, and that all happened before Takaoka.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so, and we had communication with other cities, but those were the two that I remember the best. Yeah.
Wow.
But Gera was the next one after that, I believe. Am I right about that, Tom?
I don't know if it's Plock or
I think it was Gera.
They're both
Yeah.
very close.
And that Gera happened because the wall came down,
Mm.
and Gera had been an Eastern Bloc
Right.
city, and of course, you know, Fort Wayne has a terrific German population, heritage, a lot of German heritage people, and so it was a natural. That's why we had thought about Hamburg originally.
Mm.
And but I don't remember how we made the first contact with Gera.
I think it was Jim Sack and Kenny Scheibenberger went.
I believe you're right. I would imagine that Jim would have been involved. Yeah.
So was the process between finding Gera and Plock were those things happening simultaneously before the official sister city was signed between Gera and Plock?
I think they happened within a year. And I believe it was a Purdue professor who discovered Plock.
Stan Podzelensky.
Well, he came along after. He was there early on, but he wasn't the initial instigator. It was somebody at Purdue.
Well, Stan was very.
Oh yeah,
he promoted
he took
it
it.
for
He
sure.
kept it going for a long time.
Absolutely.
And those connections were made for different reasons, right? We hear about how some sister cities start because of economic reasons, some are just personal reasons. And would you say that in our line of sister cities with Fort Wayne, those tend to start because of one person kind of leading the charge?
Yeah.
Is that
Definitely, yes. And with the Podzelinskis, two of their sons married dancers from the group Visla.
From Plock.
From Plock. And one of them happens to now be one of the foremost cancer doctors.
Mm-hmm.
After she came here and had children and went to school, it's just an amazing story.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's right, yeah. Well, we run into a lot of stories like that, you know.
Jews. There are a lot of interesting love stories with their sister cities, and I think
Yeah.
some of us can attest to that.
That's right.
That's
I
right.
think the most recent one is the.
Most recent
Yes.
one. There seems to be most recent one connected to our friendship city.
That's right.
But before we get to our friendship city, because that's our newest or maybe youngest relationship, what was our connection with China, with Taizhou?
Well, Tom, you knew more about that.
Yeah, I wasn't directly involved, but I remember going to the National Sister Cities Conference in Albuquerque one year with the mayor's liaison, Carrie Promilewski, and Stan Barker, and we were inundated with representatives from China wanting a sister city, and they were all over the convention. And I understood later that it came from China's a centrally controlled society, and the top people said, hey, if you cities want to develop, you need to have a sister city in the United States. So there was a full court press on, and we had 2 cities that were seriously pursuing us. And fortunately, we had a community organization here called Friends and Family of China, which is predominantly Chinese Americans, but there's also a lot of families who've adopted Chinese children who are part of that group. And Jennings Lee was their president. And as soon as we started looking at a city in China, he got on board, literally, the board of directors. And then he and the mayor worked hard to, we sent a delegation to Jennings' mother's hometown, which I don't remember the name, but it wasn't the one we picked. And then I was able to go with the mayor when we visited Taizhou, and that's the one we ended up choosing. But it was that was one I would say was probably an economic, the driving force was economics. China was looking to develop their own assets, factories and that sort of thing in the United States. We were told, although this never happened, that in order to get Chinese business to come here, we needed to have a sister city relationship. So there were, from what I understood, at least 20 communities in Indiana all focused on getting sister city relationships in China during that period about 10 years ago. And it was all with the promise that they would get a big car factory or something. And some did land a few businesses.
I see. So going into our youngest city relationship so far, Mawlamyine, was it similar in that there were a lot of cities from Myanmar courting Fort Wayne, or how did that one come to be?
Actually, the ones we contacted, we really only contacted 2, and they were at the recommendation. We met with the ambassador from Myanmar in D.C., and he gave us a couple ideas that he thought would be appropriate for us. He knew about our community because I'd met with him, and brought him all our Chamber of Commerce materials, who we were, what we were, and he suggested Bago and Mawlamyine. So Dorothy and I and Min and my wife visited both. And I'd say Mawlamyine expressed a greater interest in us.
Absolutely.
I unfortunately got sick and wasn't able to make the meeting in Bago. So
They
Dorothy
had
and
to
my
take
wife
over.
went. And I was suffering in the hotel, but they were not as. They did not make quite the push for a relationship. I think they already had a sister city in China.
They had.
And Mawlamyine had none, so they were much more interested. And they were less developed than Bago.
Well, when we crossed that bridge, and remember how we traveled from Yangon
To Mawlamyine, yeah.
all of a sudden we saw this beautiful city with this river and
Oh,
everything. And so we were courted actually with
For sure.
the first time we met them. We were just this small delegation. Across from us is a whole bunch of people, from
The cabinet, the entire cabinet of the state government.
And I think the university.
University had a representative.
So when, as Tom says, when the governor
The chief minister, they call him, but kind of the governor of Mon State.
walked in, everybody stood up and with a whoa, I guess we better stand
He
up.
walked in behind us and we didn't see him, and all of a sudden he was standing.
And so they did sort of a grand kind of introduction, and I think afterwards we wanted to see the university.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
they set that up.
within an hour he set it up, and we went to the university, and there was another room full of people with the heads
All
of
the
all the
departments.
departments. I mean, how do you get that many people together in an hour? You know?
Right.
Wow.
So we knew they were sort of very impressed and wanted to sign right away.
Yeah, they didn't want us to go to Bago. They wanted to sign.
In fact, they wanted us to stay that
They
day.
wanted us to stay over
And we're driving over to
to Bago.
Bago. And we get a phone call saying, we're waiting for you at the this place.
The
and we're-
Golden Rock.
And we're going to, do some ceremonies and things like this. And we said, no, we can't do that. We have to go.
We'd already left town.
You know.
Oh,
There was a misunderstanding of,
Yeah.
he invited us, and I guess he's not used to people saying no.
Uh-huh.
Well, Min said, she said, we don't speak the language, but Min insists, she said no, and we were already in the next town when he called and said, where are you?
with Mawlamyine, isn't there some connection between the fact that Fort Wayne has a large community of people living here now?
Yeah, we have quite a few that were involved in our committee that we set up who were from Mawlamyine.
Yeah, it seems like a
Nyaga
natural,
is one of
like
them.
a natural extension of our program.
Right. And we did include a lot of meetings with the local Burmese people here, and they voted to go with Mawlamyine. And because it represents a lot of the people that are from there right now. So it was a comfortable fit.
Well, certainly Mawlamyine and the Fort Wayne connection makes it very unique because we're still currently the only U.S. city that has a relationship with the city of Myanmar.
So it probably won't be one until the political situation changes.
Yes, so
When we first went to the embassy, this would have been 2015, in the Yangon, the U.S. embassy, they met with us. And if I may interject, the Department of State, the United States Department of State, and the embassy staff, without their help, we could not have done this. One of the first call that I made when Min approached us about having a sister city there was to Sister Cities International, who fall under the State Department umbrella, and they put us in touch with the Burma desk, the experts. And they were nice enough to have an hour-long phone call with me about whether this was possible, and they were very encouraging and supportive. And had they said this is a dumb idea, that would have ended it for me. I would not have proceeded. And I think everybody, certainly the mayor, would never have gone along. So without their help, we never would have accomplished that. But
And I should thank Tom for having the connections and I mean, for me to call these people, I wouldn't know what to say. But Tom, being an attorney and an expert on negotiations, right?
well,
So
they're all
thank you.
very friendly. They were like waiting
They
for my
are.
call. One of the women, there were two women, Acacia Clark and Heather Rogers, who were in charge of the Burma desk. One of them had just been to Fort Wayne a few months earlier to help organize Aung San Suu Kyi's visit to Purdue to IPFW.
Oh, that's right.
So as soon as I called, she goes, "Oh, I've been to Fort Wayne." What? So we already had a little bit of a connection with her office.
And having this connection of a city with so many refugees at that time,
right.
it was kind of a perfect match, we thought.
So Mary, how did you get involved? How did you get interested?
Oh, this is perfect, actually. I'm supposed to be interviewing all of you, but I will answer that question because the two people who got me involved in Fort Wayne Sister Cities are right here.
Oh.
So, just very briefly, I came back from Philadelphia in 2015. I came back to Fort Wayne, and I thought my degree was in international educational development, so I wanted to do something internationally related. But coming back to Fort Wayne, I thought, well, what can I do that's international in Fort Wayne? So the first thing that popped up was Fort Wayne Sister Cities.
Yeah.
So I sent an email just asking, can I volunteer for Fort Wayne Sister Cities? And at that time, it was Mrs. Kittaka who responded and said, well, come and sit in our board meetings and just see if what you want to do. And then also at that time in 2016, that was when Mawlamyine had just been signed as a friendship city, and we were going to start the English teacher program.
Mm-hmm.
So it was Mr. Herr who approached and said, well, we're looking for an English teacher to pilot our English language teacher program. Would you be interested? And I said, of course I would be interested, because my background in education, and I
Her
wanted to do
resume
that.
was full of experience and education. It was just what we needed. It was just, I tell Mary, it was divine providence that her resume hit my desk right when I was looking for someone like her.
Yeah, so that's how I got involved, and since then, I've been involved in wanting to get to know our other sister cities. Yeah, I've only been to Mawlamyine, but I really would love to go see our other sister cities.
Well,
Doesn't it seem wonderful that things just happen, and we're all connected? Otherwise,
yeah.
Yes.
and we took the charge and said, okay, I'll do it.
Yes.
That's right.
So with all the trips that you've been to, is there a particularly memorable trip that you've experienced?
Well, that's easy for me. The first time we went to Takaoka, Japan, we had a group of 40 people headed by our mayor, Bob Armstrong. And we thought we'd already affiliated, because we had thought we had signed the papers as of 1976 in Fort Wayne. But the Japanese said, well, and this was kind of, they didn't exactly say it, but they let us know that from their point of view, it wasn't really done until we came there and did it in their way.
Mm-hmm.
And so we arrived by train in Takaoka, 40 of us. The train platform was full of people, every kind of news person you can think of. They met us, greeted us, led us upstairs, huge throng of people, band playing the Star Spangled Banner, presented us with bouquets of flowers, then had us, after speeches, you gotta have speeches.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, speech
But after speeches, we got on two buses. The windows were rolled down, and the buses went very slowly through. If you remember, Takaoka has that covered street.
Uh-huh.
Down that covered street with people 5 deep on each side. And one thing I remember most was a lady brought a small child in her arms out and held him up so we could shake hands. Yeah, and everybody had a Japanese flag and an American flag, and were waving them. I mean, you just never forget that.
Right.
That's quite a reading, isn't it? Wonderful.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I went, I was not with Sister Cities. They had come for a visit here, and I think I gave a concert at one of their receptions. Yeah. And so our art teacher, Mike Schmidt, had the children make 1,000 cranes and sent it to one of the schools, which happened to be Camille O'Reilly's school. And so I wrote him a letter and said, well, I'm supposed to be going for a teacher's, I think it was a 3-week trip with the Indiana teachers. And it was in 1989. That's my first time and I went straight to Takaoka because my husband and I took I think 2 weeks before the trip to go. And they just greeted me with wonderful things. And I got to go teach several classes. I gave a little concert and went swimming with some of the teachers and met Mr. Arai, and he invited me to go, my husband and I, to go to his home to have dinner. And then when he meets us at the hotel, he says, things have changed. We have a different schedule. I said, oh, really? He says, well, they're giving a dinner to me and giving me some kind of award. So you're coming with us. I said, okay. And Mr. Kittaka, you're going to give the speech. I said, and he says, no, this is Dorothy's trip. She said, well, we'll see. So we have dinner. I'm the only woman there, and these are all presidents and vice presidents of companies of
Oh,
Takaoka.
yeah, sure.
And my husband forgot to take his zodi off. And this one was like, I said, Bob, take it off. But they were so nice to me, and I don't drink, so they kept giving me Coke.
You didn't get in on the kampai.
Yeah, I just did it with Coke. And then at 9 o'clock, 5 minutes to 9, they said, well, okay, now's the time for the speech. And I said, well, I could sing a song. And they said, okay, you can do that. So then I sang the song, they let me on, so I had the whole stage, okay. So then I gave my speech. And Bob didn't have to do it then.
He made it all up on you.
Yes, okay. But that was our first trip to Japan, and it was just wonderful. And they were so accommodating. And then after that, I think I joined Sister Cities. So it was a nice introduction.
So Tom,
Favorite trip?
Yeah.
That's hard. You know, I've had probably a dozen. Each one presents some moment like that where you go to a school and I think it was one time Dorothy and I and Claire went. We were gonna blow it off and do something else with the rest of our group, and somebody said you have to go, and we show up and the whole school has turned out. They have signs with our names on it, and I was like, my, if we had missed this, it would have been horrible. But the reception is just what blows you away each time. You walk up to City Hall and there's a singing choir for us.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of that. I guess the trip that impressed me the most, that was the most unique, was Dorothy was instrumental when we were celebrating. I think it was one of our early anniversaries with Taizhou. Dorothy raised all the money and organized the bringing of their 400-year-old opera, a very
Very
old,
ancient, yes.
ancient opera, a Lutan Taizhou opera. And that's not just singing, it's acrobats, performances. And the first time they'd ever come to the U.S. is the first time they're out of China even.
Right.
An amazing accomplishment. So then they wanted our ballet.
Mm-hmm.
So I was fortunate enough to go with Dorothy and the mayor, and we took the entire, 10 members of the ballet, Fort Wayne Ballet, and they performed twice while we were there. And Taizhou, we went around in luxury coaches, stayed in nice hotels, had banquets every night, and
Food.
it was an amazing trip. And they took us to all the sites, and ancient village, and calligraphy, and all kinds of things. It was an amazing
that was
trip.
fun. And it cemented us, because all of a sudden they said, right away, the next year, they wanted the ballet. And they actually specifically asked for them. So that's why we invited them to go, and they were so thrilled.
that's kind of the international.
You don't need to translate.
Yeah, the cultural stuff is the thing that's understood every place.
Right.
Yeah,
And
music,
then
dance.
they performed two very, what would you say? What was the ballet?
Contemporary.
Well, but sensuous.
Yeah, they're pretty.
Bolero. They're wearing tights and they
The
look
two
nude.
bolero.
And they loved it. I mean, we weren't quite sure how it would go over, but it
Well,
was,
and then
it was
we were
beautiful.
sitting with this whole rank of government people, and I'm looking at them to see, because they looked, like very, very tight.
Flesh-colored tights.
And I was.
And they're beautiful people.
Yeah, they're
so.
gorgeous. But afterwards, they rushed to the front of the stage.
The audience.
The audience.
To talk to the dancers.
They wanted to take pictures. They felt like rock stars.
Yeah, they were just like rock stars.
And
And they want to go to our other sister cities, so we had a trip planned for Mawlamyine, as you know, when they were going to go to Mawlamyine and perform, but some things entered into the picture.
Someday we will.
But I would like to take them to the other sister cities. I think if when opportunity arises and we get invitations, we'll do that.
That would be wonderful,
I
because
think Gera's got this old concert hall that would just be. Remember we saw that piano concert
Oh,
Howard in
yeah.
that magnificent building,
Oh, yeah.
beautiful artwork.
Yeah, Gera has changed immensely. My first trip to Gera was right after we became a sister city, which was like a year after the wall came down. And then I went back again. I think you and I went, didn't we?
Yeah, you went. I went with you one time.
Anyway, it was several years later. I couldn't believe the change in Gera between that first trip and then when we went. I mean, in that second trip, it's a modern city. But when we went the first time, it was the old
Soviet style architecture.
Dull and yeah, not no facilities, no amenities. Totally changed.
Well, I had a wonderful opportunity to go to Plock, Poland and teach English, of all things. I'm a music teacher.
Yeah.
For 3 weeks. And I was sort of a substitute for Karen Barker, who started that whole wonderful program there. And so 3 of us from the United States, Susan Galaska and Chris, can't remember his last name now, but had a wonderful time. We taught from kindergarten all the way up through to adults, 1 week at a time. And so I used music as a base for teaching English. And we sang songs, and most of it was having to do with food in songs, like Food, Glorious Food.
And they were adults, weren't they?
Yes.
Your students were adults.
But they're small children from kindergarten all the way up. So with the middle school and high school kids, I did some musical pieces and an opera, like Hansel and Gretel, and just all kinds of things that were a little different approach to vocabulary. And at the very end, the adults said, "Okay, we're not coming to class on Friday." I said, "Why?" They said, "We're taking you out to dinner and eating all Polish food." And so that was really fun. Yeah, they scared me. I thought, well, they're going to leave me. And I was able to do a concert there as well. And met a lot of the dancers of the pizza group. That was a very wonderful trip. And they fed us every morning this breakfast you wouldn't believe. We were the only ones in their school dormitory. And so I think we thought we'd gain a lot of weight, but we lost weight because we had to walk everywhere. It was great. But that's the kind of experience you can have with Sister Cities. It's an amazing opportunity to see the world and to know other people and how they live and making friends. It's a privilege to be here, and I am so grateful for this experience.
Right. Yeah, truly it
So
has.
you guys all take note, because the Sister City program is always looking for more people who are interested.
Right.
And if you get involved, you'll never regret it.
Yeah.
Since we're on this theme of food, and we recently released our cookbook,
Yes, we did.
right? Because you've all collected and have had this rich experience of tasting all these foods. Is there a particular meal that stood out to you in your travels to all of our sister cities?
When we went to Taizhou, China, of course they have these big Lazy Susans, and I think we counted 30 different dishes.
Yeah.
More than 30 different dishes. And we
Every
said,
time.
yeah, and there's more food. We can't eat this much. You know? So we took note about the ones that we really liked and have them make it for our gala that next time. But I probably should show you. I should probably get a cookbook so you can see it. Maybe later on we can do that.
Yeah.
But we sold out our 400 books already. And now hopefully the marketing and fundraising will take over the distribution of the other.
People like the art museum and their shop and the history museum, places like that, would love to have a supply of those books they could sell.
We do have them in about 5 different places, yes.
Good.
And one of them is the Paradigm Room at the Art Museum.
Yeah, good.
And visit Fort Wayne.
Yeah.
Christopher
James, Men's Clothing.
Men's Clothing.
Okay, well, good.
And
Shameless plug.
olive twist, and
You're on top of the marketing.
He's a good supporter.
yeah, that's wonderful.
That's right.
Well, my favorite meal, I remember it well.
Mhm.
Our first day in Takaoka, and we just came across on the train from Tokyo, and Takaoka is on the Sea of Japan, and it's known for having the best sushi in the world.
Mhm.
And we sit down for a lunch, and there's this massive platter of sushi, which includes urchin and eel, and I'm just beside myself with how good it is. And the woman sitting next to me was Lucy, and Howard was on the other side of me, and neither of them eat sushi. So
Oh,
they said, Tom,
His best meal and my worst.
they said, Tom, would you like my sushi? Oh yes, Howard, thank you. And then Lucy says, Tom, would you like? I had 3 platters of sushi,
oh my God.
and it was the best sushi I've ever had.
Great.
You didn't eat the natto, did you?
I'm not a big natto fan, and neither is the mayor. He
No.
remembers when we got him to eat natto one morning.
Well,
He
that's
thought it
what-
was a practical joke.
But the natto is fermented soybeans, but it's very healthy for you.
Mm.
And I remember as a child, I just loved it, and I ate so much of it. I think they thought I had appendicitis, but I was okay.
It has the consistency of airplane glue, so it's kind of a turn
Kind
off
of
for some
stringy,
people.
you know. But actually, it's very nutty tasting.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
But you have to have the right things to go with it, like rice and some things
Pickles.
to put on it. Yeah. So
Well, Takaoka, they've learned, at least from our experience, that in addition to the traditional food that they would put out for us as visitors, there would always be a platter of ham sandwiches. So, for those of us that didn't like the
Sure.
sushi.
one time as teachers when we went, all of a sudden they said, Dorothy, we just called a cab and we're going to go to McDonald's because we have to have a hamburger. And if you order anything with fish, we're going to kill you. So I said, okay.
Well, McDonald's is everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah,
Everywhere.
except Mawlamyine.
Except Mawlamyine, yeah.
Oh, really? They haven't got there yet.
Not there yet.
And Kentucky Fried Chicken, too.
Mhm.
Seems very popular.
So we've heard a lot about all the positive memories and all the really rich and fun memories. But some people probably don't realize, although I think, Mr. Herr, you've alluded to this briefly, some of the challenges of working with sister cities. So for example, contacting the State Department. So not many people are aware of what does it really take to maintain a city relationship. So what would you say are some of the challenges for people who might be looking into being involved in sister cities or wanting to start a sister city? What are some of the challenges that you've experienced in the time that you've been involved with sister cities?
Want me to go first?
Yeah.
The one thing I found when I was on the board is that we would often be approached by a citizen of Fort Wayne and say, hey, we need a sister city in Africa.
Mhm.
Okay, and we're all volunteer board members, we're all busy,
Mhm.
or we need a South American, okay. And we make some attempts, but the key, in my experience, and I was on the board when we added Taizhou, we added Mawlamyine, so I can speak to those two.
Mhm.
In both instances, we had an organization outside of sister cities that was committed to maintaining the relationship with that city. With Taizhou, it was Jenning Lee's group, the Friends and Family of China. With Myanmar, she had an organization that was helping the Burmese refugees, and she would organize a meeting of 25 local people who were all committed to maintaining the relationship. So because it's a volunteer organization, you really need a group of people, not just one, but a group of people. The Polish had the Polish National Alliance, the Germans had German Heritage Society, and even the Japanese have a strong organization. So that's what made those successful. And if a mayor ever says, hey, we're going to add a city in Australia, which happened one time, it just doesn't work. You have just someone who's really interested in that culture in that city and has an organization, because if they move on, you have to have the organization there. So that once we solve that problem, it's worked very well. But to try to follow up on somebody's whim, it's just not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I realize there are big parts of the world we don't have sister cities, but it isn't because we're discriminating. It's just we haven't had anybody come forward and say, hey, I want to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it takes a champion to come to us and be persistent about it too. And when we tell them the criteria, we want a town or city that's somewhat comparable to ours as well. Of course, with China, the smallest
It's
one was
impossible.
a couple million people. It's impossible.
I think Taizhou is like 5 million, isn't it, or
Yeah.
10? It's big, but it's small by China
I
standards.
know.
Mm-hmm.
So,
In fact, they didn't have an airport or high-speed trains when we first went there.
oh,
Well, Howard taught me one thing too, because I happened to start my presidency with a new mayor who wasn't interested in sister cities, and it made it very hard.
Mm-hmm.
You all have been lucky because you've only known Mayor Henry, and he's been the biggest supporter of all the mayors that I've worked with, and that's the key. If the mayor is not interested, not just money, because the money's never been that big, but just the administration, the staff, and the interest and support that you get from a mayor on any project. Without that, I think the whole program would go down. So you have to have a mayor, and Howard says the key is as soon as the new mayor takes office, you take them to a sister city. Because once they visit it and they're treated like a diplomat or a dignitary and they see what it's all about and the friends they make,
Mm-hmm.
then they're sold on it.
Well, I think with our sister city, not only do we have student exchanges, which we thank Howard for very much, because that starts you at a young age to think about global connections. And so that's very, very important. But then we have a physicians exchange with Takaoka for how many years now?
Yeah.
Many,
It's
many
been quite a
years.
ways.
And then with Gera, Germany, we have this connection with the police. And with Taizhou, we did have ping pong, didn't we? Table
They
tennis.
sent a tennis
Yeah.
table team, yeah.
And so
table tennis.
we do have diverse types of exchanges a lot. And of course with the cultural exchanges too. So we're very able to take a lot of different avenues as far as connections.
Well, and you gotta get, in addition to the mayor, you gotta get the rest of the officials in this neighborhood interested in Mayor Henry, if you're listening, county council members, Allen County City Council members, if you're listening. It takes money. One of the unhappy experiences I had was we had a group visiting from Takaoka, and I happened to see them being escorted from, I think, the art museum to the courthouse, walking in the rain. Well, they don't treat us that way. I mean, there should have been a bus provided for them to go wherever they were going. It takes a little money from the city, and I say that the Allen County commissioners as well as the Fort Wayne people, Fort Wayne and Allen County are like this. And what's the Fort Wayne Sister City program is great for the people who live in this community, even if they're outside the city. So we just need to have some awareness that it does take, not a lot, but some more funding than we usually have been able to get, other than what we can raise from private sources.
And the city's always good at getting better rates, like on hotels. The
That's
city gets a
right,
special rate on buses. So if they're just participating, they can do a lot with little money.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point because I think people in Fort Wayne aren't aware, especially if they haven't had the interaction with their cities, how the hospitality is different when we go visit.
Exactly.
So I think we should reciprocate for sure to show people that they are welcome in our city.
Exactly.
So what would you say, and we'll wrap up the discussion here, 2 questions. Where do you see the future of the organization going? And then also, what would you say to people who are new, or perhaps to some of our officials, what is the value of Fort Wayne Sister Cities?
Well, I think to some degree there has been some economic development. I think there was at least one, maybe two Japanese companies who many decades ago came here and built facilities, factories, employed people. And they didn't come here because we had a relationship with Takaoka, but one of their criteria was, at least for the Japanese, that does the city have a sister city in Japan? Do they show some interest in it? Because you're bringing people from another country, you want to know you're welcomed, and that's one way to manifest the fact that you do welcome people from other countries. So that does have a selling point. And another thing I think is important, Howard has given us an endowment that provides tens of thousands of dollars every year for students in our community to study in our sister cities and to host students from our sister cities to come here. And I know to us it's a big thing. To the city it's a small thing. But I don't know why when, they're always trying to attract businesses, right? I mean, they have 3 different agencies that are funded with taxpayer money trying to draw new businesses here. I mean, it seems to me one of those selling points should be the Sister City Scholarship Fund, which, as far as I know, doesn't exist anywhere else in the country.
Yeah.
And it's always going to be there. It's always going to provide money for that kind of travel. And as the world gets smaller, as we're all trying to attract foreign businesses, I think it's a huge selling point. Just that, if you're only interested in economics, just that alone. And then, of course, tourism. You bring people here from other countries. They bring money. They stay in our hotels. They eat our food. That draws. And not to mention all the cultural and educational, which are fairly obvious. But if you're trying to convince a politician, you got to talk money, and those are good selling points, I think.
Okay. The true for me, just the fact that you expand your whole mind about how you're living in this small house or big house, but how technology has taken us all over the world so quickly. But it's not the same as visiting and making friends with people. The economic part of it too, I realized being connected with Jazzy in Indianapolis and learning about the fact that the Japanese economy here is the largest in the United States. There's more than 340 companies, I believe, and we have 70,000 jobs here, just in Indiana. And we are like the biggest connection between that city. And I know that I think it was Fort Wayne Metals, they perfected the very thin metal wire that is used in heart surgery. So I think that is a connection there between our two cities. I don't know of any others going forward on Germany or
I don't either, but they might exist.
But that's one place that we could probably expand our connections.
Well, I say world peace. If we had more sister cities, we would have fewer conflicts. And as I look back over our history, and I think if we had sister cities in some of these countries, if they'd had sister cities here, and if we'd had the kinds of exchanges we've had, friendships have developed, a lot better chance that we wouldn't have these conflicts.
Absolutely correct.
Yeah, that was President Eisenhower's
Yeah.
stated purpose for sister cities. Was he had just survived World War II and knew what it was all about, and said we need to have friends all over the world. That was the goal.
I think that connection of one person at a time, making a friend, will do a lot. It just keeps spreading. And if we can have that personal connection, not just with little squares of Zoom, but in person, staying with them in their house, having people stay in your house that come from different places, changes your life.
And thank you so much. I think that's a great note to end on our in this conversation, because that is the heart of Sister Cities. It's about resolving these bigger conflicts through people-to-people exchanges and knowing one person at a time and building those friendships. So we hope that those who will be able to listen to our conversation will really keep that in mind and in their hearts, so that they can perhaps contribute a little bit and even want to make friends across the globe, because I think all of us here who've been involved with Fort Wayne Sister Cities have really benefited a lot, but also given a lot to people across the globe. I know definitely with our work in Mawlamyine, we're still seeing the fruits of that labor. And so again, we thank you very much for paving the way for us. I know all of us have a tough job to follow. You all have done such a wonderful job. So all of us who are younger on the board, but are in different committees. I'm thinking about Justin there, and Josh also, and of course Joey here. We have a lot of work to do to keep that vision going. So again, thank you so much for spending this time with us.
Thanks for doing it.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you guys.